And today we are going to conduct a demo session for Checkpoint Firewall. My name is Ankit and I'll be hosting the demo session for you. I'll just mute all of you for the entire demo session. At the end, we will have a question answer session wherein you can ask your, doubts, queries, whatever you can have. So I'll just mute all of you right now. Later on, we will have that session. Yeah. So we'll quickly start. Uh, so I have been in this IT industry for around 19 plus years now, and I have worked on various security products, solutions across all major OEMs. However, today, as I said, we'll be conducting a small demo session on Checkpoint Firewall. So the course highlights are like you will be getting hands-on exposure with practical labs. So the idea is, you may have, there are so many courses out there, especially for Checkpoint and other firewalls also. But those are all, uh, uh, documented stuff. It's like I'll be going as per this criteria or these topics and that's it. But that's not this course what is all about. It is a customized course module. You'll see the contents very soon. So it is more based on the practical labs, practical deployment scenarios, the issues that I have faced during implementation, and I have documented it, made a small lab for it, and things like that. So the real life scenarios, troubleshooting. Of course, I'm certified on Checkpoint at 3 levels. I'm CCSA, CCSE, and CCSE plus. And then yes, of course, at Skilled Inspirational Academy, we give you the lifetime support for interviews. So you can just call up and clear your doubts or any queries that you may not have been able to answer in your interview. You can just call us and get them clarified as well. Target audience, again, anyone who's interested in security, network administration, firewall administration, who wants to switch over from network to the security domain. All of them are most welcome. Prerequisites, as I said, I'll be taking this course right from the scratch. So very basic knowledge about TCP IP networking, basic security knowledge in terms of, layer 3, layer 4 info, IP address, ports, stuff like that, and basic IP addressing, subnetting, and networking fundamentals. There is no major prerequisites as such. Even if you have never worked on Checkpoint, it is all fine. We will make you very well acquainted with Checkpoint Firewall at the end of the course. So these are the contents. So this is a customized course, as I have said. So I don't know whether you may or may not find something similar, the course contents out there, but I have tried to include all the topics starting right from the components, installation, different installation scenarios, uh, management of the administrations, their permission profiles, policy and the layers management, natting, log file management, backup restore. I have a topic for SSL inspection as well, coupled with UTM features, wherein we will have all the IPS, the app control, URL filter, everything demonstrated. We have IPS, DLP demo as well, lab. So these are the actual course contents that you will get, and then the user authentication, and in Checkpoint it is called identity awareness. So we will actually deploy AD, and we will integrate it with our Checkpoint firewall and provide authenticated access to the users. And last, it would be the VPN, which is always the interesting topic. The site-to-site connection as well as remote access. So we will do all this in a lab in the real course. Okay. So let's start. First thing is, why do we need an NGFW? Because what we believe is, like, if we get an NGFW, we would be able to write rules or filter packets based on these criteria: source IP, destination IP, protocol, or destination service. And typically this is what a rule would look like, right? This is what a rule would look like in the firewall. Now my point is the same thing is also available on your routers, correct? Same thing is also available on your router. You can deploy an ACL and do the same thing. Why do we still need a firewall? Why do we need to invest in a very high costly component or a costly solution, which is like a next gen firewall? Any which ways, I will have to buy an internet router when I'm getting an internet link, so I can deploy the ACLs over here, right? So the answer is next slide. This is the stateful inspection. So what do you mean by stateful inspection? So imagine there is a server with an IP 1.x.x.1, which is used to host some service. The service could be web application, trading application, online shopping application, internally hosted. We have AD services, we have IIS services, and things like that, right? So if there is a client, let's say with some IP 2.x.x.2, and if that client wants to communicate with my server, we go back to our TCP basics, right? We say that the client will first send a SYN packet, then the server will send SYNAC, and then the client will send an acknowledgement, and then a TCP session is formed, and then the data transfer starts. So this is how a normal data exchange will take place. But what if, yeah, and once the TCP session is started, depending on the flow control, the bandwidth, and whatever the agreement happen between the clients and the server, they will start exchanging the data. The client will send, the first sequence number packet, 1 to 1500 bytes. The server will say, okay, I have received it, acknowledge second packet. So the second packet would be sent, right? So all this is a part of my session. Okay, so when I say stateful inspection, this session is actually monitored until the server, until there is a FIN, and which is acknowledged by the server through a FINAC signal. So the complete session started from SYN to FINAC. This is my session from client to the server, and it has to be monitored. Now, why it has to be monitored? Imagine there is a hacker in between who will just transfer any byte. He will change my IP. Okay, he will change the IP address to same IP as I have or the client has, like 2.x.x.2, and he will send a packet with some random sequence number. Now, if that device is not aware about the stateful inspection, what is going on in the session, it will actually accept that packet. Okay, so here NGFW, which is very well aware that the first packet was 1 to 1500 bytes, the second packet was 1500 to 3000 bytes, the third packet that it was expecting was 4500 to 5500 of 4500 to 6000, but now someone has sent 9000. So NGFW will block that packet. It knows that if the packet is retransmitted, it knows if the packet did not reach the destination, it follows the TCP language, it follows the TCP protocol and all the rules of TCP. And that's why it is able to provide you that security. So the moment there is this TCP session formed, the client IP and the server IP is taken into a table called stateful inspection table, and all the data exchange between them, whether the packets are defragmented, whether they are retransmitted, whether their packets are missed or needs a retransmission, all that info is made aware to the firewall. And that's why the firewall will block such type of packets or out of state TCP packets, out of state UDP packets, it will block it. Whereas your router, it will allow it, because your router just works on layer 3 and to some extent on layer 4. That's it. So it does not know about the sequencing, it does not know about the reassembly of the packet, fragmentation of the packet, nothing. And as a result, the attacks caused by those channels will also be accepted by the router. So this is the first and the foremost criteria that we need an NGFW. Uh, Apart from this, there is something called as unified threat management. So now, once we have a network that is, like only those the session replay or the session hijack are not the only ways of compromise or hacking. So we have many channels, right? We have web, something like URL filter. We need a proxy, we need email, we need antivirus, we need APTs, all that stuff, right? So all this we need. Also, we need IPS, intrusion prevention system, because that is also one attack channel, right? So the idea is, if I have a firewall, I can subscribe to all these features, unified threat management features. I can pay and subscribe. It's like a subscription based service. And you can use that single box for protection across all these channels. So when I say URL filter, you can have, a certain group of employees to allow certain websites and block certain unproductive websites. That type of configuration is supported on Checkpoint. Then we have antivirus. So your firewall box can act as a mail gateway. So whatever emails going in and out of your organization, it can scan those emails, scan those attachments for virus, worms, and take appropriate actions on it. It can also act as an anti-spam server, wherein certain emails received with certain uh, blacklisted words or something in the body, something in the attachment, something in the subject, you want to drop it or block it or just deliver it as a spam, it can take all that actions. It also has data loss prevention feature. So when I say data loss prevention, it could be like, a small example. I'm working with some kind of a firm which is into production, okay, manufacturing process. Consider like a mobile phone. Now I am at a very high position and I have access to all the design specifications of the product, right, of the phone. And while leaving the company, I'll just copy all that and just go away, right? So that is like something called as intellectual property of the company that should not go out. That data should not go out anywhere, right? So that's the idea. So that data, or I mean, there are other standards as well. There are data protection standards. When we talk of banking industry, there is PCI, payment card industry data. When we talk of healthcare industry, there is HIPAA data and PII data, personally identifiable information data. For certain countries like Europe, there is GDPR compliance, wherein it is called General Data Protection and Regulation, wherein normal things like my name, my email ID, my phone number should not go out of my organization or should not be shared across, right? So data loss prevention helps you to comply to all those rules. Then we also have intrusion prevention. Now, intrusion prevention is something like, you would wonder, like, even after so many things, URL filter, antivirus, I have DLP, anti-spam, everything. On top of that, I also have a firewall, which is NGFW and stateful inspection enabled. Why do we still need intrusion prevention? So the idea is, let's say from outside, from internet to inside, right, to your demilitarized zone, or you can say one of your web servers or your company websites, which is working on port number 80 or 443. Or let's say if there is an FTP server, it's working on port number 21. But and that traffic has to be allowed in the firewall, correct? Because that is the business requirement, that has to be available to the internet, to the whole world. But the point is, on port number 21 itself, there are many vulnerabilities running. So in the firewall, you may write a rule that any source destination is my FTP server and port number is 21. You have to allow. That is fine. The rule has to be there. But on port number 21 itself, there are many web vulnerabilities running. So if you just check, there is something called as CVE. I'm just showing it to you. CVE website. So if you just go there and check it out, something like this, and you can just search the list. So if you just type in FTP, there are like 1228 vulnerabilities which are running on FTP port itself. So when you are allowing FTP traffic into your organization, you are going to allow these vulnerabilities or these exploit traffics also. because they are primarily running on port number 21. So who is going to prevent us against all these known vulnerabilities? CVE stands for common vulnerabilities and exploits. Okay, so who will protect us against this is IPS, intrusion prevention system. So for example, some other company may have Citrix as a part of, outside to inside connectivity. So once you say Citrix as an application has 268 vulnerabilities, and these vulnerabilities keep on growing day by day. There is no application which is 100% secure. So as a result, we already see, right, our Microsoft Windows, we keep on getting patches every week, correct? So this is the idea. This is where our IPS comes in, and it will help us to prevent these type of known vulnerabilities, okay, known CVEs. Then we have something called as application control. So there's something for URL that is fine, that I will allow Facebook and deny Facebook. That is all good. That is a very, level one kind of a solution. But when I say application control aware, awareness, that means that, let's say if, because Facebook is in itself is like one destination. So if you want to completely, block Facebook, you'll put one destination, it will get blocked, right? But the idea is, if I have to use Facebook chat, and one of my friend is using Facebook games, Facebook chat should be allowed, but Facebook games should not be allowed. So basically the content, even though the destination is same, even though we are accessing from the same network through the same firewall, the firewall should be intelligent enough to understand the content, that this fellow is trying to access chat, I should be able to allow it. Same way, this second guy is trying to access games, I should be able to block it. So you should have, even with the Skype, let's say Skype is a business application, but I don't want someone to transfer files through Skype. If someone is trying to call, that is fine. Okay, so basically they are going to connect to the same server, but depending on the content, we are going to allow or disallow certain application or certain features of an application. So that is application control. Then there is identity or user based access, wherein I'm in Mumbai right now, maybe, and I travel to Delhi. I need the same access. I don't know what my IP is, because the CXOs don't really know what their IP is and what access they will get, right? So I need to have a policy that if this user logs in, irrespective of the IP, he should get this access on network, on internet, on a website, on emails or whatever. His policy should be same across all other channels. So the idea is, as a user, I should have an authenticated access, authorized access, without the general criteria of providing access to a source IP. Okay, so that is also possible. You can add local users. You can also integrate with AD server, and that identity awareness we just discussed. So we can have those AD groups also used in the rules to provide uh, access. Then we have something like sandblast. So this is related to your APT, sandblast threat detection and threat extraction. So APT is nothing but you would have heard a term called a 0-day attack or a 0-day virus. Now, what is a 0-day virus first? Okay, so today is 7th March. Whatever viruses were there until yesterday, okay, all my companies, all the security companies know about it, that there was some ransomware, there was some malware, some virus, some worm, whatever, right? And they have some kind of vaccine for it, some update for it. But what if the virus has come down today morning, let's say at 12 o'clock afternoon, there's some virus which has been brought down by some hacker, correct? Now that is a very new kind of a virus. It's called 0-day, no antivirus, no ips just gives you protection on known vulnerabilities. Okay, but what if it is an unknown file? I've never seen this file, I don't know what this file is going to do after coming into my network. I really don't know whether it will start encrypting your data or what, correct? Because I have not seen that file ever before. So what they do is there's something called a sandblast threat detection. So that file will be given to a sandblast box. Now sandblast is something similar to your production environment. You can consider it as a virtual box, as a VMware box, which is similar to your production environment. So in the production, if you have like 4 GB RAM and Windows 10, so the same environment is over there in the virtual box, and that file for which we don't have any behavior, any reputation, we will send that file to that sandblast box and execute it over there. We call it like detonation of that file, and we will see what that file is doing, whether it is trying to add itself to startup, whether it is making a call outside to a geographic location, unwanted geographic location, or is it trying to access some registry files, is it trying to do some unwanted process. All that we will see, and then accordingly we will take a call whether to allow that file or block a file. Okay, so that is what 0 day is all about. There are a few more features like file hashing. We'll compare the files with good hash, bad hash, all that stuff. There's one more feature which is threat extraction. So this is in conjunction with your email server. So something related to attachment. So some scripts are executed as a part of backend to a PDF file or macros to an Excel file, right? So threat extraction is a feature wherein the checkpoint removes that threat and delivers a clean email, clean attachment to the end user. Okay, so this is a part of a threat prevention blade of checkpoint, and it is available as a part of paid subscription. The last one is anti-bot protection. So anti-bot is like a small software which would be installed on your machine. It will not do any harm to your computer, but it just gives access to the hacker for remote execution of tasks. Okay, so uh, once your machine is like infected with the bot, the hacker can actually use it for launching DDoS attack, or recording your keystrokes or other such stuff. Okay, basically it is like a robot. Now your machine will act as a robot for the hacker, and using some scripts he can automate certain tasks. Okay, so all that protection is provided by Checkpoint. Of course, as I said, it's a paid subscription, and each of these subscriptions on Checkpoint are called blades. Okay, so if you are going to enable URL filter, it will be like URL filtering blade, IPS blade. They call it blade in terms of Checkpoint terminology, right? So this is how you may enable all of these. uh, Now, after this, you may ask me a question, which NGFW I should be using, correct? So there are some companies like Gartner. So you can, I don't know how many of you are aware about it, but once you see like, all these, there are 4 quadrants to it. So the companies which fall under leaders are the best. The next best are the challengers. Okay, so the firewalls which fall under these 2 quadrants, leaders and challengers, are good ones to use. So Gartner actually evaluates, something like you want to go and buy a phone, you will go to various websites, check specs and all that, right? Check the camera and all that stuff. So Gartner is a firm who does that for you for firewalls, and they release a report. They release this quadrant every quarter, and they tell you that which firewall is best in terms of load handling capacity. And they actually, it's not only load but various other features, including price, business share, market share, a lot of stuff. And then they will tell you that, okay, this is our report, now you can read this report and find it out which one suits you best. There is something called as Forrester wave also. So instead of quadrants, there is wave out here. So there is a wave of leaders, there's a wave of strong performers, contenders and challengers. Okay. So even here, the ones which are there in the leaders are good ones. Okay, the next best one is strong performers, and the next best one is contenders. So this is a company called Forrester. So even they do the evaluation of firewalls, and they also release this kind of report, regularly, every quarter. And then we have something called as NSS Lab. Okay, so NSS lab has a different way of evaluating a firewall. So I'll just explain you in short. So if you can see this, this Barracuda network over here. So how does NSS lab evaluates this? If I get a Barracuda networks firewall, this is like, 70 to 80. So this is like 75% of tuning, security based tuning, I have out of the box. I just bring in the firewall, I just deploy it plain vanilla, good enough. Like 75% I'm more or less I'm secure. But I further fine tune it. I go and I apply my own rules, I apply my own configurations, some hardening. Then I can fine tune it up to this level, which is 90 to 95, kind of 90 to 93. So the contenders who fall in this area, okay, all this you're able to see, right, after the fine tuning, they are known as recommended vendors as per NSS lab, recommended vendors, and all of them have more or less good value. Okay, so that's the idea. That's how they measure the firewall credibility, right? Now, again, it's up to you. Depending on cost, you might have various other stuff, various other criteria for evaluating a firewall and finalizing one. Okay. Now we will jump into checkpoint. Okay. Now, what is checkpoint? Now, logically, a firewall is like a bigger desktop, bigger machine, right? With more number of LAN cards, a higher CPU, more RAM. Every device is, at the end of the day, it's a hardware machine with RAM, CPU, and hard disk. Correct? So logically, it is that. But if you consider, like, if I get a desktop from the market, right? I get a desktop, and then what the first thing that I need is I need an OS on it, right? So I'll go and buy Windows 10 and install OS on it, and then I'll start deploying software on it, as in MS Office, correct? So the same funda applies here as well. Checkpoint is essentially a software which gets installed on various types of hardwares. Okay, now Checkpoint as a company ships out some appliances, that is fine, but technically you should be able to install Checkpoint on various different types of hardwares. So, and depending on each of the hardwares, there is a specific OS and a compatible software file. Okay, so you would be really amazed to know that Checkpoint I can install even on Windows. Okay, I can get a server, I can install Windows 2019 server on it, and I can make that machine as a firewall. So that's the flexibility of Checkpoint. However, Windows is not recommended, but logically or technically it is possible. So if there is this type of hardware which is called Nokia IP appliance, this company has been acquired by Checkpoint now. So it is also called Checkpoint IP appliance. The OS is IPSO. Okay, so you have to get a box IP appliance as a hardware from the market or order it from the Checkpoint, and you have to install IPSO on it, and then the Checkpoint wrapper or Checkpoint software on it. That's the idea. The second type of hardware could be your Dell, IBM, HP servers. Okay, you can get, as I said, you can get more RAM, more CPU onto it, and you can use that as a firewall, more LAN cards. Okay, like for LAN, WAN, Internet, DMZ, all those Internet segments, you can install more LAN cards, and on this server you can have an OS which is called Checkpoint Gaia, which is the latest one right now. There is a one more OS which is called Secure Platform, or SPLAT for short. So you can also download Secure Platform and install it on that server, or you can install Windows as well, as I just said. However, these type of flavored deployments are discouraged by Checkpoint, recently. I mean, and now they are giving something like next generation appliances, which are the latest. So probably chances are that latest or wherever you go, you will find this kind of a box everywhere. This is available mostly with Gaia, but you should be able to install Splat on it, secure platform also on it. And the beauty is, whatever hardware or software or OS or whatever you're going to use, end result is always going to be a checkpoint firewall. Okay, so it really does not matter about the hardware resources or things like that. The end result is always going to be a checkpoint software instance deployed. Okay, so this is a small table. So like if you're going with Nokia Altian switch firewall is something which looks like this. It is very old device, but some clients have it at the cost of extra paid support. Otherwise, you will not be able to order this. So the idea is if you're going to use this hardware, you have to download an ISO, make it a bootable, put it into the machine and reboot it. And you will have the OS as well as the software package installed on the box. Okay. If you're going to use Nokia IP appliance, you will have to, by default, it will come with one IPSO version and one checkpoint version installed. If you are going to upgrade, so you may need to install IPSO OS first and then the checkpoint file. If you're going to use a hardware server or a Dell server, again, you can just download the ISO, make it bootable, put it into your DVD drive, reboot it, and the installation will start. There is driver compatibility, chart. There is hardware compatibility chart available so that all your devices, everything is supported on inside the server. Okay. I have seen certain customers doing this, because sometimes the checkpoint appliance is really getting very costly. So they buy software license from Checkpoint and they deploy it on their own hardware. Okay. Again, Windows is also one option. This is also discontinued except for some high version appliances, Power One, UTM1 appliances. Uh, so again, that can have Splat, ISO, or Splat or Gaia as an ISO file, and the software package is included. So you can just turn on the appliance and start configuring it. The same thing with the latest ones. Okay. But most of the time nowadays, everywhere you will be able to see Gaia OS everywhere. Okay. But there were some days like, people installed it on secure platform and stuff like that. But nowadays you will find only this pink colored appliances, pink and black. Okay. So now components of checkpoint. Okay. So components of checkpoint. Essentially, there are like four components. The last one is optional. So there are three components. The first one is the firewall itself. We call it enforcement module or gateway, or sometimes in checkpoint terminology, they also call it VPN1, FW1. The function of firewall is to act as an enterprise gateway for all the traffic. So your traffic going from LAN to internet, LAN to DMZ, internet to DMZ, LAN to WAN, everything will have to pass through the firewall. Your network switches, your switch feeds will connect directly to the firewall, and all the traffic between these zones will be monitored by the firewall as per the policy that you deploy. The second component is called a management server. Now the management server can also have, something like your own hardware along with Windows OS or Gaia OS, uh, you know, flexibility again, or the checkpoint may give you a appliance which is called as Smart One appliance. So Smart One appliance is only the management server component is installed on it, nothing else. Okay, so using the management server, you can manage the firewall. The job of the management server is to store the access list or the rules that we have, and also store the logs. By default, whatever traffic the firewall will process, the logs will go to the management server by default. Okay. Third component is a small GUI client. It's a small EXE software that will be installed on the administrator of the firewall. So let's say you are a firewall admin sitting at your desktop, right? So you will need this software installed on your desktop, because see, the firewall and the management server will actually be installed in the data center, right? And every now and then you want to write a rule, you cannot go there and write some rule, right? So you will connect from your place, from your desktop to the management server. This software, the smart client, always connects to the management server only. it never connects to the firewall component. Okay, depending on the rights, depending on the permissions that you have as a part of your credential, you will get access to manage the firewall in the management server. So you have to remember that the smart console always connects to the management server only. So that's the third component. And the final component is the optional one. As I said, it's a log server. So by default, as I said, all the logs go to the smart one appliance or the management server. But in case if you want something which is dedicated for log management or log server, something like a SAN storage, NAS storage, we can configure that and send the logs to the log server. Mostly people don't do it. All of the logs go to the management server itself. Now, two tips out here. Okay, two tips. One is OS hardware mix and match is possible. That means if I install a Gaia firewall and an IPSO management server, or my management server is on Windows, is fine, no problem. Okay, the same way, like I have hardware of Checkpoint, and I have my hardware on the management server, which is my own hardware. Again, fine, no problem, as long as the software is Checkpoint and your licenses are in place, it will work. So OS and hardware mix and match is possible, and single setup file is required. If you want to install firewall, if you want to install management server, if you want to install log server, you just need to download a single file. Smart console is available separately as well, or you can download it at a later stage once your installation is complete. But the idea is you just have to download a single file for whatever component you want to install. Okay. Installation scenarios. So depending on what components you're going to install on a certain hardware, there are two types of installations possible. One is standalone, or sometimes it is also called as two-tier deployment, in which we have the firewall and the management server deployed on a single hardware. The hardware again can be anything, IP appliance or a bare metal server or this type of device. It can be anything, right? And we still have the smart console installed on your desktop, which will connect to the management server component of it. Okay, it will have the single IP. Firewall will also have the same IP, and management also will be installed on the same IP. That's why it is a standalone. The second scenario is a distributed scenario, which is also called as three-tier deployment. So here we have something like, consider Mumbai. So in Mumbai, I have one firewall, and I'm sitting at Mumbai, so I have my smart console installed, and there is the management server also, which is installed on a separate hardware. Now I have my firewalls at Delhi, which is an NG appliance. I have a firewall in California, which is a Nokia IP appliance. I have a firewall at Bangalore, which is a Power 1 UTM, one kind of an appliance. So sitting at Mumbai, I can manage the policies, I can write the rules, I can do all the management stuff sitting at Mumbai from my desktop, because I have the connectivity to all these firewalls, and these firewalls are integrated with the centralized management server. So this is called as the distributed architecture or three-tier architecture for Checkpoint. Smaller companies may go with the standalone ones, 25, 30 users. Bigger companies which have a scattered presence, global presence, they go with the distributed or three-tier architecture. Okay. The next slide talks, okay, here there's one more tip. At the bottom, it says that the management server should be running highest or equivalent version of the firewall that you want to manage. So the management server, if working on R80 and the other firewalls at R80, fine. Other firewalls lower than R80, fine. But if one of the firewall is R81, then you will not be able to manage it. Okay, so your management server has to be on the higher or the equivalent version of the firewall that you want to manage. Okay. So this is the installation pros and cons. Okay, so if you're going to have a standalone environment, there's a single point of failure, the box fails, everything goes down. You have lost your ACLs, you have lost your connectivity also. Okay, But on the other hand, it is really easy to manage. There is no integration involved, nothing, because both the things are installed on the same device. Traffic logs can also store up, very fast. The checkpoint logs are quite heavy, so the hard disk can be, go out of space very soon. So these are some pros and cons. For distributed, what you can do is, always, if one thing fails, there is a backup for it. So for instance, if your management fails, your firewall will keep on running because your network feeds are connected to the firewall. It will keep on, processing the traffic. You will not be able to change the policy until you get your management server up, correct? But the traffic goes on. The same way, if the firewall fails, your ACLs are at the, your policy are at the management server. You just get a backup box and push the policy to the new box, and you should be able to go live. So that is the idea. But again, these are like pros and cons. And again, there is some kind of TCP connection required from my management to the firewall. I need some TCP port number 18191 connection. So if the link in between fails, then also there is a downtime, correct? So these are just the pros and cons. But depending, again, as I said, global clients go for that, and it is still being used. So this one was all about my checkpoint theoretical part. Now I'm just going to show you the lab, a very brief lab, like what type of lab we'll be deploying, and then we'll keep on adding components to it. So for instance, right now I have my laptop through which I'm connected to Zoom as well. So its IP is like 192.168.11.102, which is coming from my Wi-Fi router, which is my internet link, internet router, or my LAN interface IP, right? So my gateway is like 11.1. This is the normal setup through which I get my internet. Now on my laptop, I have deployed Hyper-V. This is where we are going to do most of our labs. Okay. In the Hyper-V, I have created two switches. One is Wi-Fi LAN switch, which acts as an internet segment switch, internet switch. Basically, it gives me the internet connectivity. So whatever machines I create in Hyper-V and bridge the LAN card to Wi-Fi LAN switch, that will be connected to the internet. Simple. Okay. So I have also bridged my Wi-Fi adapter to this Wi-Fi LAN switch. So as I said, all the machines which I will create in Hyper-V will get internet if I bridge the LAN card to the Wi-Fi LAN. The second one is the internal or the LAN segment, you can say. Okay, so the second switch is called CP internal. So there is one segment for internet, there is one segment for LAN. This is like a pure LAN switch and internal switch. Okay. So here in this Hyper-V, we are going to deploy a checkpoint ISO. We will make it as a standalone FW plus management, the components installed on it. We'll give IP address of 192.168.11.40 to one of the interface, which is my internet interface or outside interface, you can say. And we will have some internal IP, which is 10.20.31. Okay, any internal IP we can give actually, but we'll consider this. And we have a GUI client installed on the Wi-Fi LAN segment as well, through which we manage the firewall, write the rules and stuff like that. And here in the internal segment, we will create one node which has an IP of 10.20.35. And through the firewall, we'll give the gateway as 10.20.31. This Windows machine node 1 will have a gateway of 10.20.35, and then it will go out on the internet. We'll write rules on the firewall, we'll do the netting, and we can do all the configurations as well. I've shown you in the beginning, the course content, DLP, UTM features, IPS, everything we can do it in this lab. So we'll keep on, adding stuff on this integration of AD server and all that. We can, just keep on adding stuff on this lab. But this is the basic lab that we would be doing. This is the simplified version of the lab, wherein we have two, like very simple way. We have two interfaces, 10.20.31, 192.168.11.40. This is the internet segment, internet router going towards internet. internet segment switch, which is my Wi-Fi LAN switch. And then this is the LAN switch, the internal segment side. And then we will have one node as well. And we have the GUI client. So this is in a simplified form of the lab. Okay. So meanwhile, what I will do is I'll try to show you the console. I already have the lab. I'll just show you. It is there. It is starting up. Just give me 1 minute. GUI client. Okay, so I already have the checkpoint firewall installed up and running. Okay, now let's just see this, the client as well. How does it look, the look and feel of it? Okay, so that's the small portion of my lab. So this is the software that I was talking about, Smart Console. This is the exe file. And once you install that, this will be the desktop shortcut. Just give me a minute. Right? Yeah, sorry. So now, okay. So can anyone confirm you're able to see the screen now? Akash, you can raise your hand if you're able to see my screen.
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay. So I'll just log into the Smart Console. I'll just go on mute for 1 minute. So this is my Smart Console. FW admin is the password. I'll show you once we do the live course. I'll show you how do we configure this username, passwords, and everything. Okay. So I'm going to connect it to my standalone server, which is 11.40 as per my lab, and I'll just log in. So starting R80 version, the devices are very, very resource intuitive. They will require a lot of RAM, a lot of CPU, a very high storage and stuff like that. Okay. Earlier it was very lightweight uh, until R77.6. Okay. But since R80 was released, it's really very heavy, and the design is also changed. The internal design for checkpoint is also changed. So this is how this is the console. We also call it smart dashboard. Okay, this is what the dashboard is all about. There are 4 tabs. So here you have all your objects like firewall object or your management server object and stuff like that. So you double click on it, it will tell you what all blades are enabled on it. Firewall, and then we have management. So if you want to really enable URL filtering, the moment you click on this, you should have a subscription license as well. It will help you to configure URL as well. So something related to identity awareness. So everything needs its own license, its own installation requirement. So these are gateways and servers, something where checkpoint is installed. This tab, you can write your rules, add new rule above, or whatever. You can write source, destination. So I can just create one node. I'll say host, and I'll say node 1. I'll give the IP of 10.20.30.5. Say okay. So the node 1 is created. Destination can be any because I want to give internet access. Services also can be any, or you can restrict only to HTTP, HTTPS, and DNS. And I'll say accept. I'll say log, and I'll say install this policy on my CP lab FW firewall. Okay, and you can also drag drop this, you can like just do like this. Okay, so it's very simple. I mean, you will see a lot of this during the course if you enroll, but this is how. And then the action is to log. So if there is a traffic hitting this rule, I want to see the logs, which you will see in the logs and monitor. Okay. And then manage and settings is about administrators, adding more administrators, customizing their permission profiles. So if there is a night shift operator, I don't want him to give read write access, or I just want him to give read write access to only one module, just the IPS module. Yes, that all is possible. So depending on that, you can create role-based access that is there for managing, and you can create more policies. So that is all present in manage and settings tab. Okay, so this was it about, and so when I said there was one thing called as enforcement module, right? We also called firewall as enforcement module. So the idea is we write the policy on this on the management server, and we install this policy. Okay, so when I say install this policy, these two rules get enforced on the firewall. That's why it is also called as the enforcement module. Okay, so that's the idea. So you write your rules on the management server, and then you enforce it on the firewall, and this is how the policy installation takes place. So these two rules will now get installed on my firewall. Okay, so that was pretty much it from my side. Let this policy get installed, and then we are probably ready for the questions. So with it, can you just maybe after this installation completes, you can just stop the recording or something, and then we are open to queries.